The moving truck had barely pulled away when I heard the first knock, sharp, loud, the kind of knock that said, "Ownership, not courtesy." I hadn't even unpacked the coffee maker yet, but when I opened the door, there she was. A woman in a stiff HOA polo shirt gripping a clipboard like it was a weapon. She didn't smile, didn't introduce herself, just pointed at my porch trim and barked, "That needs to be repainted. Off-white isn't allowed here. Only eggshell." I blinked, stunned, for half a second, then said the 5 words that would spark months of chaos, "I'm not in your HOA." Her nostrils flared. Her face went red, but I stood my ground. This block, my lot, had never been annexed. My realtor had been crystal clear. But Karen, yeah, her name really was Karen, wasn't someone who took no for an answer. And that first knock was just the opening shot in a war I never asked for. At first, I thought she'd calm down. She didn't. She kept coming back clipboard in hand, waving fake violation letters that didn't even list my address. Sometimes she brought sidekicks, 2 neighbors trailing behind her muttering about my lawn or my fence. I kept repeating the same line, "Not in your HOA." Every time, she acted like I'd spit in church, and every time her smile got thinner, her voice sharper. On day 3, she parked her SUV across my driveway so the movers couldn't back in. When I asked her to move, she said she was conducting an inspection. I told her trespassing was illegal. She slammed her clipboard shut like she was sentencing me in court. The harassment turned creative fast. Bright orange fake fines taped to my door. Rumors at the grocery store neighbors whispering that my house would tank property values. Cops showing up because an unregistered construction project was happening in my garage. What they found were IKEA shelves and a golden retriever snoring on the couch. Even the officers laughed, but Karen never did. She circled my block like a hawk, snapping photos of my plates glaring from her SUV. Every night, I wondered what's next. Then came the lawn incident. Early one morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. Outside, Karen stood triumphantly beside a landscaping crew, a skid steer idling at the curb. Weed whackers, buzzing men tearing into the strip of grass in front of my house. My house. "We're bringing your lawn up to community standards," she said smugly. "You'll be invoiced." I planted myself in front of the loader and said, "Touch anything else and you'll be trespassing." The workers looked uneasy, muttered about public records. Karen shrieked at them to keep going, but they packed up and drove off. She stood in my driveway, red-faced, hissing, "You'll regret this." And for the first time I realized this wasn't about paint colors or grass height. Karen needed control, and I was her new enemy. After that, the harassment turned darker. Fake eviction letters slipped under my door. Bogus notices showing up in my mailbox, federal crime, by the way. Karen creeping up my driveway at night, snapping photos of my porch light like she was a detective. One Saturday, I came outside to find a tow truck hooking up my car. Karen standing there smug with her clipboard declaring it non-operational. I shouted, "You're not towing a thing. This car passed inspection last month and I've got 3 cameras recording you right now." The driver muttered, cursed, and drove off, leaving Karen screaming in the street. That night, my wife sat across from me, eyes worried. "What if she sues us?" she asked. And for the first time, I doubted myself. Maybe it would be easier to leave like the last family who gave up after 6 months. Maybe I was the stubborn fool dragging us into misery. I hated even thinking it, but the doubt was real. What if I was wrong? What if fighting her was hopeless? The turning point came when my neighbor Frank knocked on my door. Gray-haired, ball cap pulled low. He leaned on my fence and said quietly, "She did the same thing to the Millers. Called CPS on them until they left. Don't let her win." Later, Julia from down the street pulled me aside at the store and whispered, "If you ever need signatures to get her off that board, I'm in." That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just tormenting me. She'd been ruling the whole neighborhood through fear, and by standing my ground, I wasn't just defending my house, I was giving everyone else permission to push back. So I started building my case. I saved every fake fine, every forged letter, backed up every clip from my security cameras. I became my own archivist, building a binder thick enough to drop like a brick on Karen's lies. And soon I needed it. Because one morning I woke to find real estate agents in suits milling around my yard. Karen stood in the middle like a queen holding court. "This property is being reclaimed and resold," she announced. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. "You can't sell my house? I own it. Deed, title. Lot lines want to see?" The agents did. I pulled up county records on my phone. Within minutes, they scrambled back to their cars apologizing. Karen shrieked after them, insisting I was lying, but they ignored her. My wife stood in the doorway, pale as a ghost. "She tried to sell our house," she whispered. I nodded grimly. "Next week, she'll probably try to evict us." And sure enough, days later I came home to a bright red notice stapled to my door. Eviction order. Vacate immediately. Fake court seal. Fake lawyer signature. The whole circus. That was the last straw. I marched it down to the police station, slammed it on the counter and said, "This isn't harassment anymore. This is impersonating legal authority." The officer's face hardened. "We'll add it to the case file." For the first time I felt the system starting to turn in my favor. But Karen wasn't done. Not even close. She staged compliance inspections, dragging neighbors into my yard with clipboards like soldiers on parade. She planted giant red signs calling my home a community violation. She even filed a bogus lawsuit in county court claiming I'd failed to comply with HOA standards. My lawyer flipped through it and chuckled. "This won't survive 5 minutes. She has no jurisdiction." But the damage was in the chaos she stirred. Neighbors argued at mailboxes, factions split the cul-de-sac. Karen thrived on division, strutted around like a dictator in exile. The real showdown came at an HOA meeting packed with neighbors. Karen launched into a fiery speech about order and property values, painting me as an anarchist. Then, my lawyer calmly laid out the truth: title deeds, county maps, fake fines, the forged eviction order, the bogus legal letter with her handwriting all over it. He spread the evidence on the table for everyone to see. Silence filled the room. Then Julia stood and said, "Karen, enough. His house isn't in the HOA. You know it. We all know it." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Frank added, "We've had enough." When the vote came, nearly every hand rose. Karen was stripped of her presidency. But people like her don't go quietly. Days later, my cameras caught her at 2 a.m., scrawling red paint across my garage door. Community, traitor. I called the police, and for once they didn't just take a report, they cuffed her in front of half the neighborhood. She screamed the whole time, "This is my community. My rules." Neighbors stood on porches in stunned silence as the cruiser drove off with her in the back seat. That was the moment the war ended. Not with me leaving, not with her getting her way, but with the truth finally dragging her down. She lost her title, her power, her freedom, because she couldn't stand the idea that one house on the block was outside her control. And if there's one lesson I took from it all, it's this: never hand power to the people who crave it most, because they'll burn everything down just to feel in charge.